This is Moments with Mary, and my guest today is Councilor Paul Murphy. And today we're going to be talking about the override. But first we'll start with Paul. Paul, you're back in school. You're going for your doctorate. And what's that in?
Yeah, I do my EDD in higher education leadership. It's a 3-year program, and so I'm in year 3 and dissertation writing for the next year.
So what's a dissertation writing?
So I'm doing a study on college presidents, and so it's researching that and then hopefully interviewing them in the fall, putting that data together, and then ultimately putting a study together by late spring in hopes that I stick to that timeline.
Yeah. So then we'll be calling you doctor.
Yes, that's the plan.
That's the plan.
Yeah. Paid a lot of money to get to that point, so
And I hope you get paid well. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's not easy.
Yeah.
Yeah. Where are you working, at MIT?
I work at MIT, yeah. I've been there about 4 years. Prior to that, I was at Boston College for 7.
Wow.
In higher ed. I've been in higher ed for about 15 years.
So higher ed is you help college students?
Yeah, so I work in student affairs, so we help college students with pretty much, if you think about it, anything outside of the classroom. So housing, conduct, involvement with student organizations, things like that.
So you see the students when they first come in from right out of high school?
We do, yeah, orientation programs throughout the summer before they actually start in the fall for their first year.
Yeah. So how do you think high school kids are coming out of high school?
Well, I think it's become more complicated in general. We just got through the COVID wave, if you will, of students who experienced COVID in high school.
Yeah.
And so they came in with a whole different perspective. And for some of them, being at a college campus was new because they weren't in a high school in their own towns. And so there was a lot of navigation with that. And as we talk about and see in the news all the time, mental health is the utmost priority right now with students in college and in high school. And so just finding ways to navigate them and support them through the mental health, some of us say mental health crisis that's happening. Yeah.
I think some of us have that from the health. I worked in the health industry, so I'll say I agree.
Yeah.
So I guess you're a good one to have. We're going to talk about the override because you're in education. So both towns did not pass the override.
Yep.
So what do you think we stand?
Now, let me clarify, too. While I'm in education, I started in finance.
Oh,
I
did
got
you?
my MBA at Curry College. And so I thought my passion was going to be in finance, and it still kind of is. So I'm
Yeah.
blending the two. And so I still have a passion for finance. And I'm a better math person than I am reading. And I found that out now through the
Yeah.
doctorate program.
Oh, no. Read out loud.
Yeah.
Read out loud.
Yeah. And I have a son, too, who I read to at home, too.
Yeah,
So,
that's good. I started out, when I started my degree, I wasn't sure my company paid.
Yeah.
So I had to take something that was towards the company. So I took dual degrees in international business management and then in computer science. So I had a lot of math. And then I kind of focused on finance.
Yeah.
But then I took a class that was more human services stuff.
Yeah.
And then I knew that was my direction, even though I love finance. Like you said, it helps.
Yes. Yeah, it definitely gives you
Yeah.
a good background. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I would say I was not the most studious or academic focused student
No.
in high school.
Yeah.
So this was an evolving thing for me.
I dropped out of school 3 times.
Did you? Yeah.
I did. I ended up getting my GED. Yeah. Yep. We moved. I moved 4 times when I was in high school. I was just like, I'm done.
Yeah.
So, but, then I went back and got it.
Yeah. I think there's something to say about going back as an adult with some work experience to any education program because it gives you a whole new perspective.
Yeah, because you kind of have an idea what you don't, what you want, and you're more appreciative. Like when you learn something, you're like, wow,
Yeah.
you know what I mean? I didn't know that.
Right.
Yeah. I think I agree. So I guess we have to go back to the override.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Back to that. Yeah. Hot topic in both towns. I saw last night that the Raynham vote failed.
Yes.
Looked like they had a smaller turnout, but proportionally about the same as Bridgewater.
Yeah.
As a percentage. Yeah, so I think it's about navigating where we go from here, and I know the school committee will meet tonight, and they'll make a determination on next steps from their vantage point, and then we in Bridgewater also have our special meeting tomorrow evening where we'll hopefully know what the turnout is from tonight and then have to make a game plan going forward from there.
So I saw like our budget was balanced, basically. I mean, she had to cut back hours and stuff and not fill positions. But besides $1 million over.
Yeah.
So if we paid $1 million over what we owe them, I mean, $1 million over our budget, we would be paying the base of what was required to give to the school?
Yes, yeah, I believe so.
So,
Yeah.
so we could take that out of free cash and pay it and kind of go along and try to see where we can fix stuff.
Yeah, I think that's one alternative. I think a way to look at it. my mentality is I hate to touch that free cash for something like that, only for the fact of that solves the problem for
Yeah.
here and now. But next spring or next winter, we're going to be in the same spot.
Yeah.
And the question is, do we again pull from free cash, or where do we stand at that point?
I think we really have to start focusing on bringing more revenue in.
I couldn't agree more.
I think we should have a Chamber of Commerce in here.
I couldn't agree more.
And I think we should, next year, the Massachusetts is allowing towns to become a multi-district.
Yep.
And I mean, if you look at Easton, they
Yeah.
do really well.
Yeah.
So I know it's hard. It's going to be a tough decision because you want the kids to have, and and everything. It's just going to be difficult.
Yeah. So I again couldn't agree more. I think, after the override has failed and Bridgewater and Raynham citizens both said it can't fall on our backs, essentially, I think the town council and probably the select board in Raynham, but I won't speak for them,
Yeah.
should find alternative methods for revenue. How are we
Yeah.
going to bring responsible, I always like to use the word responsible revenue, right?
Right.
And that isn't just building another cul-de-sac with 10 houses on it.
Yeah.
I think it's about responsibly bringing in business and one family or one bedroom apartments,
Yeah.
and trying to understand how they utilize town services and look at those things. So I think we do got to dive a little bit deeper, but the priority should be revenue.
So have you ever thought about or considered that maybe we're too big and we should withdraw from the district?
That question's come up a couple times. I don't fully know. I think there would be a lot of undoing there. And so I wouldn't turn it down immediately, but I'd love to understand the costs and what that entails.
Yeah.
Ultimately, I think that's an easy reaction. And from my understanding and conversations that I've had maybe 10 or 12 years ago, maybe even more, 15 now, when Bridgewater was in a difficult situation and Raynham had, my understanding, passed or wanted to invest more into the schools and Bridgewater couldn't, that topic came up on their behalf too.
Yeah.
And so I think it's tough, when you're better positioned financially as a town to have to make that decision, or even not so good position financially. But yeah, I think there's so much there to undo that.
There is. I've heard from Raynham people that they're thinking the same way because
Yeah.
I mean, like, just during this when they had the ad hoc and stuff like that, I could see where people were going, well, does Bridgewater need more students than us? So there's that fight, like, are we paying more because more teachers are needed in this area or that area? So I've heard them talk about it, and I know, like, rather than spending money on having someone look into it, I think between the councils, the committee, the finance committee, and maybe our own HR to look into it. Because I know they said it was expensive, but now it's been years. That high school's almost, paid out.
Yeah, I know. When I did quick research on this, when the topic had come up, I think Concord, Lexington, and Massachusetts also went through that, and I think ultimately decided to stay regionalized. But there were some lawsuits involved, and I think one of the towns was trying to exit their district, and it didn't end up working out. But I mean, maybe that's a good blueprint to look at. And
There's
understand
something
why.
to look at.
Yeah.
Because, we're getting so big. So, just think of all the room that we would have in the high school.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So I would look into that. But I did look into different things, like Haley's got partnership for reading success, and we have the number one, but she's come out with number 2 and number 3. So who looks for the grants for the schools? There's a school committee. See, with the district, it's confusing because we have no authority over them. So I don't know who looks for these things and who's in charge of those things.
Yeah, that's a great question, and I probably wouldn't answer that without fully knowing myself.
Yeah.
What I will say is we talked about grant revenue at our last budget and finance meeting for the town of Bridgewater, and we've done really well over the course of at least the past 5 years when we looked back. One of the topics that also came up in our town manager search was hiring a grant writer.
Yeah.
And folks probably don't know this, but when we were doing the override meetings this winter, and when I was meeting with town staff, a grant writer as a position was something that we questioned about putting on the override to support, because that would bring in the revenue, right?
Yeah.
That would help offset the budget, and ultimately it didn't end up making it to the final override package, if you will. But I think that's something that we should explore and look at from a town standpoint, and then thus maybe
Even
the
if
schools
we
can
hire
benefit.
someone part-time.
Yeah.
Because, when you brought it up, they were like, well, for a full-time person, the expense of paying that person but they could do something else, but a part-time.
Yeah.
Because I took grant writing in school when you do, like, human services stuff you do, and that's a lot.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So I understand why people get paid a lot.
Yeah,
But-
my understanding is a lot of our department heads handle that now.
Yeah.
And write their own grants. I know fire does amazing with that, and they're actually applying to a grant now. Is what I heard to help offset some of the staffing. So hopefully that works out
I
for
think
them.
the economic department, now that they have a few people in there, have been pretty good.
Yes, yeah. They've
Yeah.
supported a lot of the town initiatives as well too with writing that. Yeah.
Yeah, we definitely need more of that. So when I went to a couple of those ad hoc committee meetings, there was one mother there, and she was really good. I guess she worked in IT, so she came up with ideas that we could save with the high school, like bundle the IT software. She brought up that Brockton has a Dunkin' Donuts in there, and you know how much revenue that would make.
Yeah.
So I think we need to, whatever happens, I think maybe we can sit down with them, even though, and that's the frustrating place, because where it's a district, we can't, there's boundaries. But if we could come up with different ideas, to save money or to make extra revenue through the high school. And she brought up like 5 or 6 that were really good.
Yeah. I think that's a good path. I would say, for me, that would be 1B, looking for ways to save money or tighten the budget for the school committee. Because the numbers I've seen, I just don't think that would amount to much.
No.
And that's my personal opinion. Everybody will have their own opinion. And I know on Thursday, one of the topics that we'll talk about is, and I don't know if we're going to get into it here, but a possible resolution to ask the school committee to dive deeper and perform almost, I guess, I don't know if it's officially an audit, but an audit on their operations.
And see, they don't have to because
Sure.
they're an entity.
Right.
Yeah.
And for me, what I don't understand, or I've only done limited research so far, and I'll do more before Thursday, is how much is that going to cost us, and what is that going to give us after we produce it? Is the cost benefit analysis, we pay $50,000, or the school committee pays $50,000 up front, and we save $100,000 plus? I think I would like to see how that works out and what the benefit would be for that. And I know we've talked about some other towns that have gone through that, which may be helpful too.
I definitely want to see an audit, but I'm not sure if I want a basic audit or one of the forensics. So do we look at what we're, spending our money on, or like a forensic, they dig in to see, okay, this is where you're losing money and stuff. I think people want that because, like I had asked, because I went back and every year, and my grandson was in the school, every year back, they never fix the air conditioners. You hear the parents complain about it. It's really hard.
Yeah.
And it's always on the operating budget. So I asked the town manager, well, why is it not fixed? And they said, once we give them the operation budget, they can use it for anything they want, even salaries.
Now, can I push back on you and ask and think, in a good way?
No, I mean, this is, sure.
Yeah, I've always, the word audit, I think, has come up in the past year repeatedly.
Yeah, for everybody.
We talk about it, I think, at every town council meeting.
Yeah.
I see it all over, online. And I think that, for me, and this is my opinion that maybe a lot of people won't be happy with, but I think that's a lazy approach. And this is why I see it that way, because the numbers are all out there. The people are out there. It's public information. And if folks dive into it and take the time to understand what the budget is and ask the tough questions, they will have a better understanding of the spending. And what I've seen over the past year is people aren't willing to do that. And I think they jump to an audit immediately to have a company do the work for them and produce a report that they can go by. And that's good for, some cases, but I don't think it should be a mechanism to replace the laziness that's happening too, right? Like, a lot of this stuff is out there and it's open. There are a lot of room for improvement, but I would say a lot of these folks, the school committee are elected to do this. And if they're not following through on the example that you just gave about the air conditioning, why aren't we questioning those folks, and why are those folks getting elected? Why are we not making progress? That's my approach. I feel like we should look at more, and especially in the town too. I wouldn't turn away an audit, and I wouldn't be an immediate no.
Yeah.
But the first question I would ask is, what have you done to get us to this point where you feel like we need an audit? What do you think, we haven't spent wisely or is questionable that would put us down that path? Because I think there's a heavy cost associated with these audits too.
I think because we see the town manager's budget.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? You see individual and stuff like that. So when we're asked, like I started asking last October.
Yeah.
So I asked for, an itemized of, the employees. You don't get that. I got things where it just ran off on everything.
Yeah.
I'm accustomed to seeing and going to school, and you go to finance.
Yeah.
You expect a certain thing.
Sure.
Because that's a corporation. I mean, that's like a business.
Yeah.
Or like, Mr. Powers just gave us his 5-year plan.
Yeah.
Did you see that?
I have, yeah.
So
Yes.
that's the school years and how much they're spending.
Yeah.
That's not a 5-year plan. I'm
Yeah.
almost insulted thinking, do you think that's acceptable to me?
Right.
I mean, I'm not in first grade.
Yeah.
So it's not that I want an audit. I want to see the information. Show me where you spent, and I've asked for this, just show me where you spent the operating budget on.
Yeah.
Show me, this is the amount, millions we've given you. Yeah. Show me where. And if you spend it on salaries, it's your money.
Right.
But I want to know. Just like when they get Chapter 70, once they get it, they can use it for anything they want.
Yeah.
I want to see where you're using it. Because I've had parents come to me and say, they're not compliant with special ed, but yet they get that money.
Right.
So I'm not back and forth. It's just how I'm made and trained to look at stuff. And when you don't do it, I'm thinking, are you hiding something? Why aren't you? Or are you just doing it because you don't have to?
Yeah.
And that's why I kind of started wanting a relationship with the school. And that's why I wanted the vice principal with the manager to get that going. You know what I mean? Because they should put forth this stuff. I mean, I've seen the budget and I've dug in. I've gone to the Department of Education and looked for the net spending costs of schools. It's complicated.
Yes.
But I don't see, maybe I have to go for, looking for open files or whatever. I can't find where they do the line items like, okay, this is the teachers, this is what they're getting, this is expensive. That's what I'm accustomed to. So maybe it's because that's what I'm expecting.
Yeah, well, I would push back again, politely on you and say that part of the override was to fulfill a financial analysis position that would live in the superintendent's office. I wonder, and I don't know this either, but I wonder if they just don't have the support to produce these reports or to track them the way that they should be tracked.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's an excuse or not, but it is very complicated, and I would imagine it takes more than one person to organize themselves in a good fashion. But I know that the superintendent's office has been cut from staff, from some of this processes over the last couple of years. And so is that part of it too? Is that part of maybe what people are missing as well? Would more support actually produce better numbers and in the long run produce a savings if we can understand it better? But I think we're asking folks with educational degrees and backgrounds to produce budgets, and I've seen that happen in higher ed.
Yeah.
Usually it doesn't end very well. So,
True.
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe that's part of the problem too, is we just don't have the right people or enough people in there to look and dive deep in some of these numbers.
Well, I don't go against it, but I'm trying to explain to them, like, I even said to Tim, you were on the school committee, so you know what I'm talking about because you've seen the budget.
Yeah.
But, you guys have to, like there's a charter of different things that they have to do, because I've looked up at the Department of Education what's required of them.
Yeah.
So they do have to send stuff in. Just send me the stuff that you send them.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because when you don't produce, or you even come to me and say, we don't have everybody, this is the best that we can do, that's explained to me, I'm fine. You know what I mean? But I think we need to that's a lot of money, taxpayers. Like you said, if we can have to hire someone from the town to work with the school to do that stuff, I'd be willing.
Yeah, but it's hard, because the message has been that we need to lower class sizes, I think was the main part of the override, right, with the schools. And so that takes away the focus from positions like that are also important and would help the town and the school in the long run too.
Maybe we could get, I know I get closed doored, and probably because I go to college and I know and I have my kids, that internship's very important.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So I'm not trying to take away teachers' positions, but we should be using BSU a lot more. You know what I mean? Even in our town hall and other places. They need internships.
Yeah.
And you can pay them. We don't even have to pay them when I went there. They pay their students stipends.
Right.
And they make sure that they get to where they're supposed to, even if they have to call an Uber.
Yeah, I would say working in higher ed, I also have interns that work in my department, and I've already disclosed I worked at MIT, and so there are some hardworking people there.
Yeah.
They're not dependable like they used to be. When I first started in higher ed, we hired graduate students who were in grad programs, and they were the most committed people because their success ultimately benefited them when it came to graduation. So the connections and the networks and the work they did, they understood that the benefit was going to help them longer. I think we've lost a lot of that too, and I see it in higher ed is laziness or not understanding that networking and meeting people and folks really benefit you in the experience to be able to walk in as a teacher and say, I was an intern at this school for this many months. I mean, that's incredible. That puts people ahead of the pack. And I don't think interns or students realize it like they used to, maybe when you had your experience too. But I've seen it in higher ed over the last 10 years.
Yeah, no, because both of my kids did internships, so I see it. I see the difference. I mean, kids are going to work in their pajamas.
Yeah.
And, you know,
Sure.
we used to have a code, and there's no longer that. But I understand that some of the BSUs students can't graduate unless they have internship
Right.
credits. So I think they're working harder to make sure when their students come out, you know, they're dependable. They've had that connection.
Yeah.
And social media probably doesn't help because, I mean, we had to go out and do stuff.
Right.
You know, now they just, I don't know.
Right.
It's a different ball game.
It definitely is. Yeah.
So I definitely would think we need to have a connection with the high school, you know, get better with that. And that's one thing that frustrates me about them being a district is there's unless they want to, because I can understand the residents like, well, that's our taxpayer money. Why don't we know? We know the town manager,
Yeah.
what she does with it, and we don't. So if that wasn't a district, it would just be a department, and it would be under the town managers, and we would have more, like we could see things. I mean, just like some of them bring up, you know, Mrs. Robinson just went through negotiation with us.
Sure.
But, you know, they look at the school and say, well, the school committee does it, and the school committee is definitely for the students and the teachers. So how pushback do they do on their negotiation, and how qualified? And those are a lot of the questions I get.
Right. But we get the same questions at the town council level.
Yeah.
Those are the questions that should be asked,
Yeah.
I think. And,
Yeah.
and folks aren't asking those questions enough or holding us accountable enough. I mean, some do because
Yeah.
we see the emails.
Yeah.
But
And we bring it up. I mean, how many times have we talked about certain things?
yes. Yeah. And when you don't know something, you better go out and educate yourself
Yeah.
about it because that's what we all signed up for.
Yeah.
You know, we've talked about my experience in education. I'm no expert in DPW and roads and water, but
You
bet
are
your
now.
butt. Yeah, I
Yeah.
am now. And I've
Yeah.
spent a lot of time understanding how that works because that's what I committed to. And I don't think everybody has that same mentality. So,
No, but I'd say that's why I've been digging into the district, because I'm like, well, I hear different things, or like I'll ask questions. Like I had Tim on.
yeah.
So I'm like, so the school committee negotiates against a high-end union attorney.
Yes.
I mean, you know, that's unfair.
Right.
So, you know,
And why aren't the school committee asking those questions, I guess, too, right?
why aren't they hiring someone? Our town manager did. She's like, okay, I'm not really good at that. I'm going to hire someone for that. And just like, you know, when you dig in, the school committee has an EED savings.
Yeah.
I'm like, well, do you have $1 million in there right now this year that you could use? You know what I mean?
Right.
So these are the things as you learn, you look at it and say, but it is, the budgeting thing is difficult.
Yes.
Because Massachusetts makes it difficult.
Yeah.
Yeah.
A lot of ins and outs and
Well,
requirements.
You know, if somebody, because they go by, okay, do they have special needs? What grade are they in?
Yeah.
Do they speak English well? I mean, this is almost like I took taxation for corporate, and I looked at it and thought, no wonder our government's you know?
Yes.
If you have a loose tooth in one eye, you can exempt. You know,
Yeah.
it's crazy.
Yes.
And so that's what Massachusetts is doing for the school board. I mean, maybe they do need help.
Yeah, I think public education itself is in a crisis state because, and I've gone to the State House now twice to advocate for Chapter 70 and 71, both for schools and the
Now,
transportation.
71's transportation?
Yes, yeah.
Okay.
And because that's been promised 100% reimbursements to towns, and it's never been met. And it won't be met in this budget that's outcoming too. So, I mean, why? Why are we not prioritizing public education from the top down? Why is it falling on the backs of, towns? Because how many towns have gone through an override just this spring?
I
We've
know.
tracked them all. We know Easton went through one. Braintree's gone through 2 now for education. It's repeating and it's happening everywhere. Randolph, I've talked to folks in Randolph and government who are watching the outcome of ours to determine their next steps.
Yeah.
And so it's not just a Bridgewater problem, it's a state problem. And I think
Yeah.
that's where the focus needs to be. Now that we've gone through our override process and our taxpayers have said it can't fall on our backs anymore. We need to go to the state and keep pushing the state. And so I did see a post and somebody said, we got to follow up with our state reps. And that's true.
Yeah.
We have to, and we have to continue to push there as well, too.
I think the governor really needs to listen to us because, I mean, when I listened, I think it was in 2024, 2025, when the superintendent had a meeting, and he's already had 100 kids come in.
Yeah.
And I know she's made, a safe shelter in here, but there's consequences to that. Now she's taken the Hill, the Hill Street, and she wants to develop more, so that's more kids. And look at New Jersey. I mean, their governor's trying to take farmland for development.
Yeah.
And they say Massachusetts is a housing crisis, but if we don't have enough houses, then you just can't move in this town. You know what I mean? So it's not a housing crisis that, you just can't. I mean, you want to move in town, but if there's
It's
no
a cost
houses,
crisis.
Yeah, you know what I mean? You can't.
How many
do it.
people coming out of college,
Yeah.
speaking of education, can afford to live in Bridgewater or buy those
Right.
houses?
So you just have to move someplace else. Like we've all adjusted. When you get married and stuff like that, you figure out where you can afford. So I think she needs to either change it or she's going to have to help because no community puts in their budget for 100 new kids.
Yes. Yeah.
So it's not our fault. We're trying the best we can. So I look at the governor and go, do you realize you just put 100 new kids in our school system? How do you figure we're going to pay for that when it's not been in the budget?
Yeah. Yeah. And well, I will say just 2 points on that, too, that I've looked into is Bridgewater seeing an increase in population of students, and a majority of towns in Massachusetts are actually seeing a decline.
Yeah.
And so we're, I think, an oddity in that sense, too. And I will say, and we've all talked about it, Bridgewater's had a good amount of development, single-family homes, let alone apartment buildings and condos. There's been how many single-family homes have gone up in Bridgewater just
There's
over the last 10
150
years?
that just went by behind me.
Yeah, and that's what I think hits our resources the hardest, hits our school systems and our police and the fire. And so those are hard to account for. Water, again, impacts our water.
Yep.
That's why I said when we talked about earlier, responsible revenue, I think, is important to look at too. But we've talked about this, and I'm sure we don't want to go down this path. But how do we control that? Can we control that?
I think we have to pull it apart.
Yeah.
We really do. Like the water thing has always bothered me. And I know I told you about different people I've listened to. Well, I actually wrote to him and spoke to him. And he says, he's a vice president and he's worked for years. And when the MMA goes to him or the Mass Health, he's, legit.
Yes.
So I wrote to him about that, and he recommended 2 different water places that just do towns, just will look at the problems like I've told him we have.
Right.
But, I'm going to have to dig into both of them and then present it and see what the cost is.
Right.
But we need to do that.
Yes.
You know what I mean? Because we're at a point where what are you going to do? And the broad streets to the buildings, those are going up.
Yeah. And I think we never talk about this because I think Ms. Robinson has done a great job in our town over the last almost year. But we were in the transition of a town manager, too, whether you
that's hard.
like the old one or the new one or what Ms. Robinson was doing. That's really hard. It's hard to plan long term.
Yeah.
And was working, quote unquote, part-time. And it's hard to have just one part-time person in there working through all these issues. And I know her mind, it probably isn't on the long-term, success of Bridgewater. She's just trying to get through the immediate. And so that'll change next week, hopefully with our new town manager coming in. But these are the topics we need to start planning with him.
I kind of feel bad for him because I already have a list.
Yeah, I think
So
everybody
I'm like,
does.
I'll wait a little bit.
Yeah.
It's just every turn, and I don't mean to get right off crap, but every turn I go to, I feel like, what have we been doing?
Yes.
You know what I mean?
Yes.
I just like, what has this town been doing? So I think with us, where we're all looking at stuff, I think we can start digging apart.
Yes.
We have to.
Yeah, I think people will see a lot of positive change over the next year.
Yeah.
From a new town manager, now a more experienced town council with, I was the new person when I started on town council, and now I'm the one of the veterans on town council, and there's 9 of us. So that turnover is huge, but we're getting the more experience. It took me, I would say admittedly, almost a full year to understand my role and where to go to when I had questions and how to break things down. And so it takes a while to get your feet under you, as does in any new job. But I think as a council, we're getting there now, too. And we can help the new counselors now in a way to support them to get there faster.
Yeah, I agree with that. It took me a while, and I watched a lot of town councils. Yeah. So I got down, the procedures, may I speak and all that.
Yeah.
But,
Robert's rules.
Yeah. But to now start learning about sewer and water, and it's just like, and then residents will come up to you and say, this problem and that problem. And then you really have to dig into it. And it's like, my kid's like, Ma, you're like back at school because, I'm homework all the time. And it's like, I have a lot to learn.
Yeah.
And I try to watch, like, not during the meetings, but I usually watch them repeats, like planning and zoning and all that. Because I have to pause it and go, okay, let me write that down. I have to look into what that means. Yeah. I mean, it's a full-time job.
It definitely is.
We have too many problems right now.
Have you ever done, or have you ever heard about, this is my last tangent, but have you ever heard about things called strengths class? It's sort of a quiz you take, and it's 35 strengths, and it gives you top 5. And it's really interesting to do that for yourself, but then to do it as a team. And that's something that I think we lose a lot. We do it in our department in higher ed, and this is probably a higher ed tangent, but understanding who does what best and how
Yeah.
you can utilize that. It would be interesting to see how something like that would play
So
out
you could do
on
it
the
as a
council.
team?
Yeah. It's a quick, I think it's like 20 to 30-minute quiz. You kind of go in multiple choice. And based off your answers, it gives you what your strengths are.
Yeah.
And my experience with it in the past 10 years I've been using is pretty accurate. And then you get a printout of your team and you see, oh, this person's really good at adapting, or this person's really good at restorative and building new ideas. And so it's fun to look at that and utilize people's strengths for some of these things.
I think we should do that. We did that with leadership because my degree is with leadership.
Yeah.
Like my focus and my degree, and then I had with leadership, and we had to do that. And it is right on.
Yeah.
I was surprised.
Yeah.
I was like, yeah, I do that. No, I don't do that. Yeah.
Right.
I think we should. And no, we can talk about anything. I mean, I'm almost tired of talking about the budget.
Yeah, me too.
I'm really tired of it. I'm hoping that we can do, like more stuff. One of the things that I started looking at the school, only because parents had brought different things up, I had a parent actually show me, and this is just in a muffin
Yeah.
that we feed our kids. Because she was like, when did we stop peeling potatoes and cooking for our kids? And she's like, look, my kid comes in for breakfast because she's got to, they go to work. And this is all the chemicals
Yeah.
that are in a muffin.
This is school lunch you're referring to.
Yeah.
They eat at school.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And they give them muffins and stuff like that, for breakfast. Because some of the kids, they eat breakfast there because they come there early in the morning.
Yeah. Well, don't tell me that's not a cost savings too, right? To get cheap food
Yeah.
that's easier to store or easy to get.
I don't know if it's cheaper really
Yeah.
than,
Maybe not.
having these. I mean, I remember when I was in high school, my mother got a job in the cafeteria, which was a little embarrassing.
Mine did too, actually.
Really?
Yes, she did.
So it's like, don't say anything.
Yeah.
But they'd give you that extra brownie or
Yeah.
something.
Don't
yeah.
talk to me when I go through the line.
Yeah.
But yeah,
please pass that extra
Yeah.
dessert. Yeah, and they used to peel and cook and stuff.
Yes. Yeah.
But I don't know. I mean, we could probably get healthier stuff for our kids because they have so many allergies and stuff.
Yes.
And I kind of look at all that stuff. I have for quite a while,
Yeah.
for years ago. When my son showed me this, he showed me this movie about the chemicals or how they treat the animals. I could not eat ham. I still cannot eat hamburger. I eat
wow.
bison
Yeah.
because it's just, I don't know.
Yeah.
So now I look at everything.
You know what's funny, and this again, sorry, go down a tangent, but in middle school we watched the movie Super Size Me. Is that what it's called? The McDonald's one.
Yeah.
We watched that in high school and middle school, and I think that's when it was starting. People were starting to realize that
Yeah.
things aren't great in the
no.
food. That,
I know.
you
The
know, what we're serving.
oils and stuff.
Yeah.
But now we have Robert Kennedy, and I'm glad he got in because I've listened to him for years because
Yeah.
he rant raves about the stuff. And I'm glad he'll make a difference for everybody.
Yeah.
The kids, everything.
Yeah.
What else do you want to talk about when it comes to the school?
I think
Or anything else that we want to talk about? Because we're going to have we can talk about anything on Thursday, right, that has to do with revenue and finance.
I would imagine so. Yes. Yeah.
Because we didn't really get to pull apart our budget.
Yeah. One thing that I think is important to talk about. We don't talk about this enough is. I think the rhetoric and online and the one side versus the other side, and that's becoming more evident, I think, across the world right now, and even here in Bridgewater. So it's not a Bridgewater problem, but it's so hard nowadays to pull people together on one cause or one issue.
Yeah.
I think that's what makes it a lot of times virtually impossible to get things done, even in government. And now, unfortunately, it's bleeding into even local government, right?
Yeah.
And so I don't know where I'm going this, but I think it's just an important thing to recognize or realize. I think whether the override passed or didn't pass, somebody felt like they were going to lose, and that's an unfortunate position to be in, right?
Yeah.
We all either won or we all either lost, and it's hard to come together. People can certainly think differently, but it got nasty.
It
gets
did.
nasty.
And I'll use me an example. So because I fought for the POW flag, a lot of people thought I was against other flags.
Sure, right.
So, and I try to say, I'm fighting for this flag as much as you're fighting for your flag.
Yeah.
And then when Juneteenth, they invite the president or the vice president to speak.
Yes.
And, so Johnny had family things. So I said, I'll go speak. It'd be a show. I'll go there because I love history.
Yeah.
But some people had said to me, well, I can't believe you're going to go speak because look at who you are. And I'm like, well, who am I?
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So because I'm fighting for a POW flag, and I reached across the aisle for the 3 flagpoles,
Right.
they thought I was one way. So it was like a group that was against me that didn't even know me.
Yeah.
And some of them one or two came up to me after I spoke, and they're like, wow, we didn't expect that. And I'm like, well, I love history.
Right.
You know what I mean? You know what I mean? And I'm
Yeah.
glad people are free. So
Right.
I think we have to understand where the person's coming from.
Yeah.
And just because I disagree with you, it doesn't mean I'm hateful or racist or any of the stuff that they say, you know. I think it comes too quickly.
I think, Mary, that's why I admire and like working with you, is because you and I may not always see eye to eye, but we always have a good conversation and we both present the points. And that's such a lost art. And it's unfortunately, it's easy, you know, nowadays with social media for somebody to post something and walk away and not have to face the consequences of it. But that civil discourse of the conversations that make us better or have a better outcome because both sides are heard or both sides compromise, I think is such a lost art. And it even happens at the town council level, too.
Yeah. Because, I mean, you need to ask, like, you know, the different things that we disagree. We need to ask, why do you agree with that? Because your background, the way you were raised and your education forms your opinion. So if I don't ask that, how will I know where you're coming from?
Right.
And I won't see that side.
Right.
I don't know. We had debating in high school.
Yeah.
And the teacher knew I smoked back then.
Yeah.
So she made me against smoking. So the teachers would purposely do that wherever you stood. So you would have to learn the other person's side.
Yeah.
Because sometimes we don't listen to each other, but you had to defend yourself.
Yes.
And that was very productive. That
Yes.
still stuck with me. I
Yeah.
was like, wow.
I can appreciate people who can sit down and see both sides and listen. Yeah.
Well, you need to, because how else can you fight against? How can I fight against you if I don't know where you understand why your opinion and how you see it?
Right.
So I'm just fighting for mine, but I'm not listening to anybody
And
else.
without those conversations, again, I'd say everybody loses.
Yeah.
Right? Because there's no compromise, there's no coming together, there's no good ideas that are happening because of that lost art.
Yeah, because, I mean, everyone's talented in something, so I'm losing out having you on my team because I don't like the way you think.
Yeah.
It's just ridiculous.
Yeah.
I agree. But I think, you know, as town councils, we're leaders in the town.
Yes.
And we need to show it. Like Thursday, we're
Yeah.
gonna need to show it that, you know,
I
we
think-
hear some both sides. We understand everybody's, you know.
Yeah.
I feel bad for the kids because some of them are upset. You know, they tried. But I hope they understand that, okay, we lost. So now how can we fix this? Or why didn't we? You know, what's the budget?
Yeah, I would even back up. I would say to those kids, you didn't lose. Nobody lost,
Yeah.
right? A decision was made, and now you move forward.
Yeah.
You have to find a path that you can help with the schools or help make your situation better through a different path.
Yeah.
Right?
Because we want to work together. We want to make this a great town with a great education.
Right.
And we just have to figure out how.
And just because Saturday happened, you don't stop there,
Yeah.
right? You find other paths. And one of the paths, I mean, we talked about it, and I know Al will probably kill me for saying this, but I met with Fire for a Fact this past week to talk about doing an event for the schools in September because, you know, there has to be other ways where we can help them and support them and make them feel like they're appreciated in town too. And I think that's where people also get lost is, you know, they say, oh, I lost, you know, got to give up, or I hate Bridgewater, I want to move, or I need to send my kid to a private school now. And I've seen that rhetoric on there from people that I did agree with a few weeks ago that are now going down that path. And that's not going to solve anything or help anybody, right? You got to keep the momentum going and find other ways. The citizens have spoken in Bridgewater. I said this already. They don't want to burden the tax anymore on them. They can't. A lot of the folks can't. And that's why they came out to vote. But that doesn't mean it's over. There are other paths we need to pursue.
Yeah.
Increasing revenue. We talked about different things like that. I think, you know.
I agree with you. I think we all need to work together and figure it out because we want the best education for our and we want the teachers, you know, to keep the good teachers.
Yes.
You know.
Yeah. A good education system in a town is paramount. That should be the top priority, and it should be for the state, too, at that level. But having a good education system, businesses benefit from that, who hire the students to work there, who we all benefit from higher property values if a school education or our school system is high. There are so many benefits to a strong education system, but it's chronically underfunded, and that's not at a town level. That's higher than that. So I think that's something we got to keep pursuing. And I know for me, I'm going to still go to the State House, and I'm still going to push as much as I can from those people.
Yeah, I'm glad that you are.
Yeah, because there's, you know, I think that our role goes beyond what just happens here in Bridgewater to make it a better town. And I want us to be at the table with the state when it comes to asking for them to change the formula for Chapter 70 in a way that benefits us. It doesn't put us as a disadvantage.
Yeah, I mean, I think you got to look at, you know, we can't get more populated at a huge rate. You know what I mean? And I don't want Hale Street. Not that I don't want people. I don't want Hale Street Department. I mean, BSU wants it for their cyber, but I want it for like a boys or girls club. So, now I got a competition against the town manager, I mean, the governor, so.
Yeah, but then it's good to, I mean, you understood this, and we just talked about this, to compromise and find a path, right?
Yeah.
I mean, unfortunately, the big bad state's probably going to win in the end on this one, but what can we get out of it as a town should now be the priority.
Well,
they should
water.
invest, right? They should invest in our water and help us bring a water main to that location that we can all benefit from.
Yeah.
That'll lower, rates for folks or just give us more water in general so we don't have to get those daily emails that we get now about low wells. So I think that, while you can sit there and be angry with the state and pick the state apart, and you should criticize them, we have to find paths that'll work and benefit us through this process as well, too. If they're one-bedroom apartments and, 5 years from now we find out 60 single people living in there and they're gone for a majority of the day, but they're paying a high tax rate, we may benefit from that, too.
Yeah.
That's a hard thing to swallow for a lot of folks because it's the first thing you think about is drain on our resources and another housing thing, more traffic, more people coming in and out. But I think looking at the increased revenue and what that could bring to the town is also part of that as well, too. So it's a delicate balance.
I agree with that. And because I was thinking, I know the governor's going to win about it, but I was thinking of going to say, well, you took my land away from boys and girls. So can you, with all these kids, how can you help me build someplace on something else and maybe they can fund it?
Right.
Because we do vision to reality, but we don't do anything in that for our kids.
Yeah.
There's not one thing in there for the kids.
Very true.
It's just, I don't know.
Very true. Yeah.
So we have to work on that.
We don't talk about that stuff as a council as much either, though, right?
You got to get it on the agenda, Paul, and I'll tell you a lot of my stuff that I wanted to put on the agenda about a year ago didn't make it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I'm hoping now that once the override, we can start putting more stuff on the agenda.
Right.
And just so we can talk about it.
That discussion part of the agenda should be full every meeting,
It should
right? There
be.
should be
I
3
agree.
or 4 things on that. And I've tried to do that with budget and finance because we can have those conversations if it's on
I
there.
love that you did that.
Yeah, and it's ask those tough questions, have a conversation amongst us, and then my goal in budget and finance is bring it back to the larger town council and let them know what we did or what the conversations we had. And it should appear on the next town council discussion so that we can all get on the same page. Because I just found out through this conversation that you wanted to see your Boys and Girls Club at the Hale Street location. I didn't know that prior to that, but that's something I would support.
Well, mostly
and help
I
you
just
with.
talked about a recreation center. Yeah.
Yeah, but to get on the same page about that and then pursue it. When does that ever happen, Mary? When have the 9 of us ever been on the same page
We're
and
not.
pushing?
Yeah.
Because if we were,
We'd get a lot done.
Yeah, we would get a lot done.
Because sometimes I walk out of the town council and go, why am I even doing this? I feel like I'm not getting anywhere. I'm on a treadmill.
Yeah.
It's frustrating.
Right.
Because I'm used to okay, make a plan, get it done, and start working towards it.
Yeah.
And it's been frustrating. But
What's
I
funny,
think we
part
can
of
do
my
it.
role, I advise student government too at MIT. I've been doing that 15 years at Boston College and prior institutions. And it's so funny to see a student government work at a college because it's a very micro piece of what we're doing.
Yeah.
And the frustration that the students have, and they always blame upper admin, right? We always hear that in higher ed. Upper admin won't let us do that or won't let us do this. The problem is they don't invest the time and they can't get on the same page to make a difference in college. But when they do, they listen, right? They listen from the top down. The president of the college will listen to the student government if they're ever all on the same page. I don't think it's any different in real life, right? If we were all on the same page and we were pursuing one goal, we would make it happen. We all want better roads.
Yeah.
Why haven't we all sat down and made a plan for better roads?
I don't know. I mean, because I actually watched different towns, and I can't remember the town because I watched a lot of different ones where they had that IA, and they drove around, and they could see the signs being dirty, the potholes and stuff. So I think Miss Robbins said we had that.
Yeah.
But, I mean, what's happening with that?
Right.
I mean,
Scan, I think it
I'd
was
like to
called.
see that.
Yes.
You know what I mean? How bad are these roads, and how can we get them done?
Yeah.
Yeah, I know. So we've been here. You can imagine we started at 10:10 and it's 11 o'clock.
Wow.
I mean, we can continue if you want this stuff you still want to talk about. We have a lot to deal with.
Yeah. I mean, I don't need to be anywhere.
I don't either.
I look forward, and I think it's important for folks to know, and we've talked about a lot, is the work that goes into this role.
Yeah.
And I think other counselors are finding that out and seeing that and making an example. And the new folks that come on have done an amazing job also doing the same thing.
Yeah.
But everybody comes on with their own priority and agenda, and then quickly we kind of all understand what needs to be done. But we just talked about we all have to get on the same page and create a path to getting those things done.
Like you said, maybe we should start doing that, like, have, one or two things on the discussion and decide, okay, how we're going to get there and make, because you ever do that, I can't remember what it was. There was different charts that you could do. So you say what your problem is, what outside resources do you need, inside resources, and then you see, because you want the goal to end. So we used to have to do that in healthcare.
Yeah.
So, these people having a problem, what's the problem? Who can come in? Maybe if we start using stuff like that, then we can figure out, instead of just talking about it, and then the next week we're on to something else.
And doing that with our new town manager will be vital too, right?
Yeah.
Folding him into to what that looks like, because we can create that path and he can carry it out for us.
Yeah.
And that's how it should work. But we haven't been able to do that for a year. We've almost lost a year when it comes to long-term planning.
Well, I look at it, it's true, but I look at it as that year has been educational. I've learned a lot of educational stuff because we've had to step up because Mrs. Robinson, she's got her hands full with everything.
Yeah.
So I'm like, okay, she's busy, or let's put that off for next year. So I started learning more about it and thinking, I'm going to have to take it easy on Justin because I've had a full year of looking into stuff. Like, I talk about the Affordable Housing Trust all the time, and it's because being on CERT, we just went, this has been a year. Last year I went and I talked about how we did a wellness check, and the people in affordable housing at Hemlock and Heritage, they didn't have air conditioning.
Yep.
One of the guys didn't have insulin for 2 years. It's so complex because we're connected with Taunton. So Taunton runs the people.
Yes.
We take care of the buildings. But we went last night, and it's the same thing.
Yeah.
I walk in, the department was overpowering. And the maintenance is supposed to make sure that they have an air condition in their window, and they didn't. And you walk in, and it smells. And I'm thinking, I've gone to both town managers. I've talked to Old Colony Services. They were supposed to do something, an outreach with us, and they didn't. They did a little coffee hour there. So I'm like, here I am a year later, still trying to fight for these because the town's made it complicated by combining with Taunton.
Yeah.
And the Affordable Housing Trust doesn't have anyone on it.
Yep.
But we have $14,000 in the trust. That's why I was fighting against changing it to a committee.
Sure.
Because then you can't take it out.
Yep.
So we used to have, how you can get bonus densities. So one of the lists on there was to give money to the affordable housing. So that's how we got the money in there. I've looked through all our ordinance. Somebody took that off, but I can't find out the legal way of doing it. So I go around in circles with stuff like that, and I just need to say, okay, there you go, Paul. This is my problem.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? What do? I asked, how did this come off? And someone said, well, they just didn't think they needed it. And I'm like, but can they do that?
Yep.
Change zoning without, an ordinance? I don't know.
Yeah. I think a lot of folks miss that, too, and I'm glad you talked through all the work that you've done there. Because, again, I don't know that, but folks don't know the work that goes on behind the scenes to get to that point either.
Yeah.
Or even the circle that you're running in. We don't talk about.
No, because I actually went to because the affordable housing has a committee. I went there, and because I know Nick on there, he asked after the meeting, Mary, do you want to say something? I did. I let them know what's going on. And it's like, well, we take care of the house, not the people. That's Taunton.
Yep.
So I went back. They had another yearly one because I wanted to tell them the updates. Told me, and Nick wasn't there. So they said, no, you're not allowed to speak because we don't have public comment. And I'm like, why wouldn't you have public comment? You take care of public housing.
Yeah.
Yeah. I just walk away and bang my head against the car. When I get in the car, I'm like, I don't know what to do.
Every other Tuesday night. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. The last thing I'll say, too, and I this is something I'll pursue and push for, is that we need to hear from our committees, and I know you agree with this, too,
Yeah.
but our town committees, commissions, and boards, they need to come and present because we've been talking about it for a year and it hasn't been on the agenda.
Yeah.
But we need to get them in, and we need to hear from them, too. And the Affordable Housing Trust is good, or, like, who can we call to our meetings to come and start talking about what they're doing?
Yeah.
Because there's a lot of good work and good people involved in those, but we're not giving them credit and the time, or we're not hearing from them either.
There's no one on the Affordable Housing Trust.
Oh, okay.
They said they never met, and it just kind of rolled out. There's no one on the sewer and water
I know
commission.
that, yes, yeah.
And they're supposed to be the ones that set, the rates and stuff.
Right.
So we have some important commissions and committees that aren't being utilized.
Yeah, and there are a lot of people that are complaining about those things. So
I know.
it's a
I
good
asked 3
opportunity.
times if the advisory, citizen advisory would become before, but maybe now that I have A new pres, I'll start pressing him for that one.
Yeah,
You
I'm
know
sure
what
we
I mean?
all will. Yeah. I'll back that.
Oh, yeah. We need to. We really, I mean, but I'm so happy that when you took over for the finance, that you now have discussions. You now make us do stuff,
Yeah.
and we dig in deeper,
Yeah.
rather than just like, okay, we're just talking.
Right.
Which is,
And we'll
I'd
spend-
walk out going, I don't even know why I'm on this committee.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Really.
We'll spend a good amount of time just understanding and educating ourselves in those meetings without any action. But if we can understand it better, when the next financial decision comes up,
Yeah.
we can now give it some.
No, you
support.
motivated me, so I'm like, I'm going to look into these contracts more. I'm going to look into that, because before it would be like, you just, this is this and this is that. And it's
Yeah.
like, well, why are we doing that? And it kind of would just roll along.
Yeah.
But as you said, as you get more experience, and then you have people like you who go, yeah, then I can say, yeah, see,
Right.
we should be doing this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, we should all be doing
So
that.
I
too.
appreciate that. You've strengthened us, and you've made me more motivated. It's like, okay, I want to dig in and know this stuff. So I appreciate it.
Yeah, same. Vice versa.
And now we're going to be in more committees, but
Yeah.
it'll be fun.
Good.
Yeah. Is there anything else you want to bring up before we say goodbye?
No, I think this has been great. It's a good
You can
opportunity.
come back anytime and we can talk, really.
Yeah, I love this.
Because I know Johnny's pretty busy, and he'll come in and we'll try to talk about what's coming up for the next. But it's good to have your perspective of it,
Yeah, I
too.
like to look at a big picture too, because I think it's good to run down the agenda and talk about what we're going to talk about. But there's so much happening,
Yeah.
and there's so many different avenues and people involved and thoughts and feelings involved.
That's why we
Let's
kind of
get
put
talk
it
about
on
it.
hold, because all we've been talking about is the override and the budget.
Yeah,
So we kind of just thought, well, we'll just take a break. But this is good, because people understand our frustrations and what we're trying to do. And I don't think they think we're doing enough, and we're trying, or that the school's doing enough, and they're trying
Yeah.
with what they're stuck with. You know what I mean?
we should be celebrating, and we will be celebrating next week with the 4th of July, because that's something we can all get
Yeah.
behind and get involved in. And they've done an excellent job
Yeah.
raising money for that. And
they
fire
need
for
help with the
effect people.
cleanup.
Yeah, we have to find ways to support all those people more, not just
Yeah.
financially, but celebrate those events that bring folks together and everybody benefits from. And it's
They do.
both sides can go down and have a good time and leave feeling
Yeah.
good about it. Bridgewater needs more of those events, or needs to celebrate those events more.
We do, and like you said, how it's divided, because the CERT team will do all the parking and stuff.
Yes,
At the,
yeah.
and I told them, because of the words and stuff, I don't want to be out there.
Yeah,
So I told them I'm not going to be able to volunteer,
yeah,
because I don't know. I mean, you already hear it's almost like we're the bad guys,
yeah,
because I don't know why, because what the town didn't override, so they're kind of at the town council, and I don't want to put myself out there, because I know people sometimes will come at me and go like,
yeah.
and that's pretty bad, sad that I don't even want to volunteer.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, people that can't approach us and have a good conversation, I don't think are going to benefit us in the long run. Hopefully
No.
they realize that.
Yeah.
But people that come in with a different perspective and can sit down and have a good conversation, I
I'll
welcome
listen.
those, because I can learn so much.
I think those are important.
Yeah.
I love to hear the comments. You know what I mean?
Yes.
Just tell us your comments without the hate and stuff. I mean, or ask us, why did you do this?
Right.
Maybe next town council, can you explain, or have it in discussion?
Yes.
Or maybe we could get like emails. Can you put this under discussion? Because a lot of residents don't understand
Right.
what's going on.
And we do have a very small handful group of residents that come to those meetings and request those things, and we have great conversations. I wish there was a way we could get more of that.
Yeah, that would be good. And I like your idea that that discussion thing should be full.
Yes. Yep.
It should be.
Yes.
Thank you, Paul. I hope you
right.
come back, because
Thank
we
you, ma'am.
really need to. I enjoyed this, so
Yeah.
thank you.
I'm going to enjoy the next year, so it'll be great.
All right.
All right. Thank you.